I woke up angry, drove angry, ate angry. For 10 years my whole life had been built around one thing, my ex-wife, and I never managed to have. Everything turned into schedules, appointments, false hope, then that dead look on both our faces when another try went nowhere. After a while we stopped being husband and wife and turned into two people managing a long failure in the same house. By the end we barely fought. That was the worst part. We were just done. So when Dominic said, "You're coming with me for 4 days and I'm not arguing about it," I almost told him to go to hell. Instead I packed a bag and ended up at a mountain resort that looked like the kind of place where rich people go to pretend nature has room service. Huge lodge. Pine trees everywhere. Glass walls. Stone fire pits. Decks hanging over a valley so clean and wide it almost made me mad on sight. I lasted maybe 3 hours before I got restless. Dominic wanted bourbon by the outdoor fireplace with some conference people he knew. I wanted noise in my head to stop. So I signed up for an afternoon off-road tour without really thinking about it. Small group. Open utility vehicles. A guide who looked 19 and way too confident. Thin mountain roads, loose gravel, sharp drops, all that. That's where I met her. Not by introduction. Not with some cute resort line. I met her because the vehicle ahead of mine slid wrong on a wet bend and one of the back tires dropped off the edge of the trail. Everything got loud fast. The guide jumped out yelling for everyone to stay calm, which of course meant nobody stayed calm. One couple froze. Some guy started shouting directions he clearly didn't understand. And the woman in the front passenger seat of the half-tilted vehicle had already unbuckled and climbed out onto the mud like she was late for something. She was in a dark rain shell, hair half out of a knot, moving quick and irritated, not panicked. She looked at the guide, looked at the angle of the vehicle, then said, "If one more person yells relax, I'm pushing somebody off this mountain." That got an actual laugh out of me before I could stop it. She turned, spotted me, and pointed at the stack of traction boards strapped to my vehicle. "You. Angry face. Help me with those." That was our first conversation. We got the boards loose, shoved rocks under the sinking tire, and ended up knee-deep in cold mud while the guide tried to pretend he was still in charge. Rain started coming down harder, sharp and sideways. My boots were wrecked in minutes. So were hers. At one point she slipped, grabbed my arm, and instead of pulling away she just stayed there half a second longer than she needed to. "Great vacation," she said. "Best week of my life." She gave me this look, fast and bright, like she knew I was joking and also not joking at all. It took almost 40 minutes to get the thing back on stable ground. By then the trail was too slick to keep going, so the guide turned us around and headed for a service cabin lower on the ridge to wait out the storm. Everybody else sat around damp and miserable. She found a utility sink in the back room, washed the mud off her hands, then looked at me and said, "You still look like you want to hit somebody." "I usually do." "Good," she said. "I hate fake calm people." Her name was Bianca. We ended up talking over vending machine coffee and stale trail mix like we'd known each other longer than an hour. Not deep life story stuff at first. Just quick shots. Smart comments. Making fun of the guide. Ranking terrible vacations. She was funny in a way that snuck up on you. Not sweet. Sharp. Alive. Every time the room got dull, she made it better. When the shuttle finally came, there weren't enough seats, and somehow we wound up in the back of a maintenance cart with 2 wet blankets and a cooler knocking against our legs. By the time we got to the lodge, it was dark and freezing and way too late to act normal about any of it. I figured that was the end. It wasn't. She found me an hour later at the bar, hair still damp, now in jeans and a gray sweater, like the mountain had just spit her out and somehow improved the view. She slid onto the stool next to mine and said, "I'm starving, and the kitchen closed 5 minutes ago. You look like a man with bad judgment. Come with me." So I did. We slipped through a side hall, found an after-hours service pantry, stole sandwiches that were probably meant for some private event, and ate them sitting on folded pool towels in a locked spa courtyard while rain hit the glass roof above us. We laughed too hard. Talked too long. Then we kept going. We walked the empty paths behind the lodge, missed the last internal shuttle, cut across a golf path we definitely weren't supposed to use, and by the time we made it back to the main building the sky was already starting to lighten. I remember looking at her standing there in that weak early morning light, arms folded against the cold, eyes still wide awake, and thinking the same thing that hit me on the trail. With this woman, life suddenly sounded loud again. And that was the problem. Because by the end of the second day, I already knew I wasn't going to keep my distance from her. Not at that resort. Not after that storm. Not after the way she looked at me like she could already see I was one bad decision away from following her anywhere. On the third night, everything almost ended over a last name. We were sitting on the edge of a locked pool after midnight, our shoes off, our feet in cold water, splitting a plate of fries we talked some poor bartender into bringing out 10 minutes before close. Bianca had my phone in her hand because she said my camera roll looked like evidence from the life of a man who never enjoyed anything. She was proving her point by taking bad photos of me on purpose. Then she said, "Wait. Go back." I thought she meant one of the resort pictures. She didn't. She was staring at an old photo from years earlier. Me in a suit. My ex-wife beside me. Some wedding reception shot I'd forgotten was still there. Bianca's whole face changed. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just gone still. "Who is that?" she asked. I already knew something was wrong from her voice. My ex-wife. She zoomed in. Looked again. Then at me. "What's her name?" The second I said it, the air just died. Bianca pulled her feet out of the water and stood up so fast the plate tipped sideways between us. "No," she said. "No way." I got up too. "What?" She rubbed both hands over her face like she was trying to wake up from something. "She's my cousin." I actually laughed once, because it sounded impossible. "What?" "Not close," she said quickly, already backing away from me, angry at herself, at me, at the whole night. Different side of the family. We saw each other at weddings, holidays sometimes, when we were younger. I haven't seen her in years, but that's her. I just stood there staring at her. And once she said it, little things started clicking into place. A surname she'd mentioned on the trail and I hadn't really heard. A story about an aunt with the same sharp voice my ex used to have on speakerphone. Tiny things. Enough to make it real. Bianca looked sick. "This is insane," she said. "Tell me you knew." I didn't. She stared at me another second, then nodded once like that answer somehow made it worse. "I need to go." I let her go. That was the smart move. Also the worst one. The next morning I skipped breakfast, skipped the hike Dominic had booked, and spent 3 straight hours pretending I wasn't checking my phone every 2 minutes. Nothing. By noon I was furious at myself for caring that much. By evening I was walking the whole resort like an idiot, acting like I might just accidentally run into her near the restaurants or the trails or the lake. I found her at sunset on the far deck behind the closed event hall, leaning on the railing with a paper cup in her hand and a look on her face that said she hadn't slept either. I stopped a few feet away. "You disappeared." She let out a dry laugh. "Yeah. I noticed." For a second neither of us said anything. Wind coming up the valley. Chairs chained together. Staff stacking tables inside through the glass. Then she turned to me. "This has to be over." It should have been simple. I should have nodded and walked away. Instead I said, "Then why are you still here?" That hit her. I could see it. She looked back out over the trees and said, because this is the first time in a long time I've wanted something before I found out it was a bad idea. I stepped closer. Same. She shook her head, almost laughing again, but there was nothing funny in it. You don't get it. My family can turn anything into a trial. Yours too, probably. My marriage is over. That won't matter to them. I know. She finally looked at me then, straight on, no more dodging it. This is the part where sensible people stop. Are you sensible? No. Good, I said. Because I'm not doing great either. That got the first real smile out of her since the reveal. Small, tired, dangerous. We did try to stop. For the rest of that trip, we stayed apart. No more midnight wandering. No more stolen food. No more acting like the world had gone quiet around us. I flew home thinking maybe that was it. Then 3 days later she sent me a photo of my muddy boot from the trail with one line under it. Still the worst week of your life? I stared at that message for a full minute before answering. Things got stupid after that. Not casual stupid. Focused stupid. The kind that builds a real structure around bad decisions. At first it was just texting too much. Then late calls. Then a coffee meet halfway between our cities that turned into 5 hours and a missed train on her side. After that it got easier to cross lines. A roadside motel off the interstate where nobody knew either of us. Long drives with greasy food in the console and her bare feet on the dash. Cheap diners at midnight. One rainy weekend in a lake town where we said we'd stay one night and left Sunday afternoon. The more time I spent with Bianca, the clearer it became that she had spent most of her life being the version of herself her family could tolerate. She was the funny one, the reckless one, the one people rolled their eyes at before quietly calling when they needed help. She had been underestimated so long it had become a weapon. She moved light. Traveled often. Kept very little. Said what she thought. And every time I started pulling back, she did something that made it impossible. One night, halfway through a 2-hour drive, my truck died outside a town so small it barely had a gas station. I was already out in the dark cursing under the hood when her rental pulled in behind me. She got out in an oversized sweatshirt, looked at the engine, then at me, and said, "You really are only happy when something's going wrong." I laughed harder than I should have. She did too. Then she kissed me in the gravel shoulder like we'd run out of room to pretend. After that, calling it an affair felt too neat. It was a relationship. Messy, hidden, probably doomed, but real. And that's why the message she sent me 6 weeks later hit like a tire blowout at highway speed. Can you come tonight? I need to tell you something. When I got there, she was sitting on the edge of the bed in that same oversized sweatshirt, both hands wrapped around a pharmacy bag like it might bite her. She looked up at me once and said, very calmly, "I'm late." Then she pulled out the test and set it in my hand. 2 lines. And just like that, every bad decision we'd made stopped being private. I did not say anything for a full 10 seconds. I just stood there in that motel room with the test in my hand, looking at 2 little lines that made no sense and perfect sense at the same time. Bianca was watching me so hard it almost hurt. Finally I sat down across from her and asked, "Did you take more than one?" She nodded. 3. Today. 2 today. 1 this morning. I looked down again. 10 years. 10 straight years of calendars, clinic drives, careful timing, polite voices in waiting rooms, and that awful fake optimism people wear when they're already bracing for bad news. And now this. Not with my wife. Not in my marriage. Not in the house where I'd spent a decade trying to build the right version of life. Here. In a motel off the highway with her cousin. I laughed once, and it came out wrong. Bianca's face hardened. "If that's all you've got, get out." That snapped me back. No. Sorry. No. I leaned forward, both hands over my mouth for a second, then looked at her. I'm not laughing at you. Then what are you doing? Trying not to lose my mind. She stared at me, waiting. And that was the moment everything could have gone bad between us. I could have drifted. Delayed. Told her I needed time. Gone quiet the way I had gone quiet for years whenever life got too heavy. Instead I stood up, grabbed my keys off the table, and said, "Come on." She blinked. "Come on where?" "We're getting out of this room first. Then food. Then we figure out what happens next." For the first time since I got there, some of the fear left her face. We drove 20 minutes to an all-night diner near the interstate. Red booths. Bad coffee. Truckers in the corner. We sat there until almost dawn, talking in circles and then not in circles. She told me she hadn't gone to a doctor yet because she wanted to tell me first. I told her I was in. Not halfway. Not in theory. Fully in. She kept testing that answer from different angles like she expected it to break. "You understand what this means?" she asked. "Not even close," I said. "But I'm still here." That should have been the hard part. It wasn't. The hard part was the leak. For about 8 days, this was ours. Just ours. I drove with her to an appointment in a town where nobody knew us. We sat in the parking lot afterward with the engine running and said almost nothing because saying it out loud made it too real. Then she squeezed my hand once and said, "Well. There goes the quiet version of life." I should have known quiet was already over. The first crack came through her cousin Tessa, who worked reception at a dental office and treated every piece of information like it was dying if she didn't pass it on. Bianca ran into her outside a pharmacy. Tessa noticed the prenatal vitamins in the bag. Asked one question too many. Bianca dodged. Tessa smiled like she already had enough. 2 days later my ex called me for the first time in months. Not text. Call. I looked at the screen and knew before I answered. Her voice was so calm it made my skin go cold. "Tell me it isn't true." I stayed quiet 1 second too long. That was all she needed. The sound she made after that wasn't loud. It was worse. Sharp and thin and humiliated. "Out of everyone," she said. "Out of everyone in the world." "It didn't start like some plan," I said. She laughed in my ear. "That's your defense?" "No. Do you know what people are saying already?" I didn't, but I was about to. By that night my phone looked like a car crash. Unknown numbers. Family members I had not heard from in years. One aunt asking for the truth like she was collecting evidence. One uncle telling me to keep my head down and not answer anyone. Dominic texting, "What the hell happened and do you need me there?" Then Bianca called and said, "My mother is at my apartment." I was on the road before she finished the sentence. When I got there, her mother was in the parking lot beside a white SUV, dressed like she was going to church or court, maybe both. Bianca was standing by the stairs with her arms folded, chin up, already furious. I barely got out of my truck before her mother turned on me. "You have destroyed this family." "No," Bianca said flatly. "That marriage was dead before I ever touched it." Her mother ignored her. Kept coming at me. "Do you understand what you've done to your ex-wife?" That part landed because of course I understood. I understood it too well. But I was done standing there getting judged by people who had never told the truth cleanly in their lives. So I said, "Do you understand your daughter is standing right here?" That stopped her for half a second. Bianca looked at me, surprised. Then the whole thing got uglier fast. Her mother crying without tears. Saying this could still be fixed if Bianca would just leave town for a while. Saying nobody needed to know whose child it was. Saying there were ways to manage this quietly. Bianca went white with rage. Manage it? Her mother lowered her voice. Don't do this in the parking lot. No, Bianca said. Let's do it right here. She took one step forward, and I swear I saw the exact family resemblance to my ex all at once, except Bianca used it like a blade instead of a shield. You people spent your whole lives dressing up lies until they looked respectable. I'm not doing that. Her mother looked at me again. You should have walked away. I should have done a lot of things, I said. I'm not walking now. That was the first time I said it in public. Not just to Bianca. Not just in private. Out loud where somebody could carry it straight back into the family machine. And once it was said, more things started breaking open. My ex sent me a long message that night, half fury, half accusation, and buried inside it was one line I couldn't stop staring at. You always wanted someone to blame for why nothing worked. That line sent me back through years of appointments and half explanations. Old paperwork. Clinic summaries. Things I had signed and barely read because by then I trusted my wife to tell me what mattered. The next morning I started digging. By afternoon I found the first thing that made my stomach drop. An email from a specialist I had never seen before, forwarded years ago into an account we used for medical paperwork. Subject line, follow-up on ovarian reserve panel. Forwarded to her. Not to me. Never mentioned. That was when I finally understood this was bigger than scandal. Bigger than gossip. Bigger than whether the family approved. These people had been shaping the story around me for years. That evening I packed a bag, drove to Bianca's place, and when she opened the door I said, "We're leaving for a while." She searched my face. "You sure?" "No," I said. "But I'm done standing still." She nodded once. "Good. Because I already started packing." We left before sunrise in separate cars and met 2 hours later at a gas station off the highway like we were running from a crime scene. Maybe we were. Bianca had 2 duffel bags, a plant she refused to leave behind, and that same look she got every time life went off the rails and she decided to meet it head-on instead of hiding. I had a truck full of old paperwork, clothes I grabbed without folding, and enough anger in me to stay awake for 3 days. We rented a small place near a lake in another county, far enough that random relatives could not just drop by without effort. For the first week it almost felt possible that we had outrun it. We bought groceries. Argued over where to put things. Went to her next appointment together. Started talking in practical terms instead of shock. Spare room. Budget. Timing. A life. An actual one. Then the family found the address. Not through anything clever. Through Dominic's sister's friend's husband, because nobody in a family network ever truly shuts up. First came flowers with no card. Then a package of baby clothes from an aunt who wanted credit without taking a side. Then the real move, a message from Bianca's uncle Gerald telling us there would be a private family dinner at the lake house the following Saturday and we were expected. Expected. Bianca read it, snorted, and tossed her phone onto the couch. That man has never invited anyone to anything in his life. He summons. We don't have to go. She looked at me. No. We do. That dinner was the last trap they had. The lake house belonged to the older generation, one of those polished family places built to hold memories and power at the same time. By the time we arrived, half the cars in the gravel drive were already there. I could feel the setup before I even shut off the engine. Windows glowing. Too many people inside. No easy exit once it started. Bianca touched my wrist before we went in. Whatever happens, don't let them split us up. I won't. Inside, it was exactly as bad as expected. Her mother, pale and stiff. Gerald acting like a judge in a sweater. 2 aunts pretending to arrange snacks while listening to every breath. Younger cousins trying to look casual and failing. And my ex-wife at the far end of the room in a dark coat, standing near the fireplace like she had been waiting for the exact second we walked in. That hit harder than I wanted to admit. She looked smaller than I remembered, but sharper too, like all the hurt in her had turned into one hard edge. Her eyes went to Bianca's stomach, then to me. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. Then Gerald did what men like him always do. Tried to put order on chaos with his voice. He said this gathering was about finding a path forward with dignity. Which really meant control. Keep it quiet. Contain the damage. Decide which version of events the family would live with. My ex laughed once under her breath. Good luck with dignity. Bianca stayed standing. Say what you actually brought us here to hear. Gerald folded his hands. This situation has become harmful to everyone involved. There are property matters, family business matters, and reputational issues. Reputational issues, Bianca repeated. There it is. Her mother jumped in, asking her not to turn everything into a fight. One aunt said the child should not grow up inside scandal. Another said there were ways to create distance and still do what was necessary. Every sentence was polished. Every sentence was rotten. Then Gerald slid a folder across the table toward me. Inside was a drafted agreement. Money. A relocation offer. Conditions. No public acknowledgement beyond what they approved. No family name discussions. No direct contact with certain relatives. It was basically a bribe dressed as concern. Bianca saw my face and snatched the papers from my hand. She read the first page, then laughed so hard it made people flinch. You thought I'd sign this? It would make things easier, Gerald said. For who? Nobody answered. That was when my ex finally stepped forward. Stop pretending this is about the family. It's about humiliation. The room went dead still. She was looking at me, not Bianca. I spent years being told to be patient. To stay hopeful. To trust the process. To protect the marriage. And now I get to stand in a room and watch my own cousin carry the life I never had. No one moved. No one interrupted her. I did not defend myself. There was nothing clean enough to say. But she wasn't finished. She turned to the others. And since we're finally done lying, maybe we can tell him the rest. I felt Bianca tense beside me. My ex looked back at me and said, "You were not the reason we never had a child." I swear I stopped hearing the room for a second. Her mother sat down hard in a chair. Gerald muttered her name like a warning. She ignored him. I knew before the third year, she said. My numbers were bad. The doctor told me. Later another one told me again. My family knew. They said not to make it final, not to say it plainly, not while there was still a chance, not while appearances still mattered. I stared at her. You let me think it was shared. She held my gaze. I let you think hope was still balanced. Yes. Bianca made a sound beside me, quiet and furious. Everything inside me went cold. 10 years of half-truths. 10 years of carrying guilt that had never had a name. 10 years of being managed. And for the first time in my life, I did not absorb the hit quietly. I took the agreement off the table, tore it one straight down the middle, and dropped it back onto Gerald's polished wood. No more, I said. Not loud. Just final. I turned to my ex. I'm sorry for what this did to you. I'm not sorry for this child. And I'm not living inside your family's version of the truth anymore. Ever had a family try to control your every move? Tell me your story in the comments, I'm listening. Then I looked at all of them. You don't have to bless it. You don't have to understand it. But you are done deciding my life. Bianca slipped her hand into mine. Not for rescue. For alignment. We walked out with half the room talking at once behind us. Her mother crying. Gerald calling after us. One cousin filming before somebody slapped the phone down. My ex said nothing else. A month later, we were still in the lake rental, still not forgiven, still getting the occasional message designed to reopen old damage. But the nursery was half painted. Bianca had started leaving tiny folded clothes on the chair in the spare room like proof. I fixed the porch steps.